Hey there, everyone. I'm going to bump up the lights just a little bit. Boop. Hopefully I'm not too bright now. It's Bryan, Barron, Director of Skincare Research at Paula's Choice Skincare, here with you today on May 10th, 2023 for the first live chat of the month. And today's topic is going to be sun protection myths, whether it's about SPF and how much you need, whether or not you really need sunscreen every day, chemicals in sunscreen, mineral versus chemical. We're going to be going over all of that, and I would love to know what some of the sunscreen myths that you have come across and maybe believed or not believed or just wondering about. Post your questions, and I will get to as many as I can during this hour. And we'll see how that goes. Maybe there won't be that many questions. You guys are just like, I am so skilled in this. I have got all my ducks in a row. I'm wearing my sunscreen every day. There's nothing you can tell me, Bryan. In which case, thank you for joining anyway. And you don't have to post a question. You can post a bit of knowledge or a bit of trivia, and we can talk about that. So, let's see. I'm getting over a cold, so if I sound a little stuffy, that is why. I was in New York City last week for the first time since late 2019. So yeah, some changes have occurred. But I was with my coworker, our director of innovation, and we attended Suppliers Day, which is put on by the New York Society of Cosmetic Chemists. It's a 2-day convention of sorts. It is huge. It seems to get bigger every year. And I haven't even gone every year consistently. But essentially, it's ingredient suppliers and to some extent manufacturers from all corners of the cosmetics industry. I mean, people there from around the world. It's not just for U.S. suppliers or only for U.S.-based businesses. Anyone in the industry can attend this show. And there's educational seminars, there's formulating, like, chemists can take their hand out. Sometimes they'll set up things that are like those reality cooking shows where you've got your chefs and they have to make, this type of a dish, and they run in and they grab their groceries, and then they have an hour to make this meal that somehow they always end up pulling it off. And if it were me, I would still be in the kitchen looking at my ingredients an hour later, wondering where the hell the last 60 minutes went. So that was there, and we had some incredibly productive meetings with some really interesting and ethical ingredient suppliers, people who are just genuinely aligned with our mission as a brand at Paula's Choice of only making sure that the products that we formulate are not only going to work as we claim they are, but they have really good data, both on the supplier side and whenever possible in the published independent scientific literature side, that attest to their efficacy and or their benefit for skin. What result will you actually see, or what's going on under the hood, so to speak, where, like in the case of antioxidants, just as a quick tangent here, we don't necessarily see the benefits antioxidants do for our skin on a daily basis. And you would never do a control group type study where one group doesn't use any antioxidants for 10 years and then the other group uses antioxidant loaded products. Because that would, we know from other studies that denying your skin antioxidants is putting your skin's health at risk. But it isn't a difference that daily use of antioxidants isn't a difference that you're going to see, like you would when you first start using an acid-based exfoliant, and that smoothness, that refined texture, that those often results that come on as fast as overnight. Antioxidants is more, there's a reparative aspect to them, but there's also a preventive aspect. And you're not going to be able to look back and say, well, hey, if I hadn't used these products, my skin would look like this today. But it was the trip was a whirlwind. It was literally 12-hour days, but sometimes longer than that if you count the socializing at night. But they just flew by. They just flew by so fast, and it really. I'll just close this side story by saying that I always get so inspired going to shows like this. There's so much really intriguing, no BS innovation going on that I just get really geeked about being able to tap into and just continue to evolve Paula's Choice to be one of the premier skincare lines for a broad swath of people. You know, our products really are for everyone. So, without further blathering on my part, let's talk about some SPF myths. And again, keep your questions coming in or comments. And I apologize if I sound a little extra nasally. I'm having like this weird tooth pain too. It's dry. And come to find out that like getting pain in your upper molars when you are getting over a cold has to do with sinus inflammation, because we have, I think it's called the maxilla sinus. And when it swells, it can press down on a nerve in your jaw that then makes your molars hurt. I mean, yeah. So I've been trying to avoid taking any ibuprofen today. We'll see how much longer I can hold out. But yeah. I hope the sinuses go back to their normal size soon. So first myth, chemical sunscreen is unsafe. And this is a bit of a two-parter. The first part is there's no such thing as a chemical-free sunscreen. Whether it's the mineral filters of titanium dioxide or zinc oxide, or the so-called synthetic or inorganic filters of like avobenzone, octinoxate, oxybenzone, all of them are chemicals. The water in your sunscreen is a chemical. The glycols are chemicals. The preservatives are chemicals. The antioxidant compounds are chemicals. Everything in a cosmetic or a skincare product or a sunscreen is made of chemicals. There are a certain group of UV filters, typically the inorganics, the organic. The organic ones are your avobenzones, your salicylates, your sinoxates. They tend to get a bad rap because of the fact that studies have shown that trace amounts of them can end up in the bloodstream. That's a whole other discussion. But the one sentence explanation is that although that is true, there has to date not been any research showing that their presence there, and it's a temporary presence. They don't bioaccumulate like in the fatty tissue. The body metabolizes them and eventually excretes them. But simply having them, small amounts of those get into the body, has never been shown to present a health risk to people. It hasn't. That doesn't, I guess you could say that doesn't mean that it won't someday, but I am very confident that that information won't come to light, it won't come to pass, because of the number of years the majority of these filters, particularly in the United States, the EU has, I think, 29 different UV filters approved versus the 17 that are approved for use in the United States. There's a lot of crossover. For example, avobenzone is approved here, avobenzone is approved in the European Union member countries, but many of these have been in use in sunscreens for decades. If they were actually posing a health risk to people, when used as directed, we would know by now. Because there have been studies that have looked. Okay, this is accumulating or this has gotten into the body. What does that mean? And so far the answer, there's no causation that's been found. Like, when this is in the body, this health problem is more likely. We just haven't seen that. So there are sunscreen filters, including the mineral ones, that may not be compatible with your skin. You may have an individual sensitized response, or what's called a photoreaction to specific sunscreen filters or combinations of them, but it does not mean that chemical sunscreens, and again, chemical is an all-encompassing term, are unsafe. What is unsafe is going in going outside without some sort of UV protection on a regular basis. It's definitely been proven beyond a doubt that sunlight, as beautiful as a sunny day is, as good as a sunny day can be for your mood, feeling that warmth, looking at all of the life it inspires in terms of, the flowers and plants and trees. It's a carcinogen to people. There are some benefits to be obtained from getting out in daylight, mostly of the mental health variety, and that's wonderful, but you can get those benefits and protect your skin at the same time. So myth number 2, sunscreen is only needed for sunny days outside. You can't get sunburned on a cloudy day. Well, anecdotally speaking, as someone who has gotten sunburn on a cloudy day, yeah, you can. That is because even when the clouds are out, and remember, clouds are just water vapor. So if sun can UV light can get through water when you're in the ocean or a swimming pool, it's coming right through those clouds. It's not going to feel as intense, or it's not going to necessarily be as bright out because of the cloud cover. But up to 90%. On a cloudy day, up to 90% of those UV rays are still getting through and still hammering away at your skin. The intensity may not be the same. I mean, for example, taking that 90% statistic into account, they're 10% less potent on a cloudy day. But that's no reason to skip sunscreen. So you absolutely need to put sunscreen on when it is cloudy out for all areas of exposed skin. Next myth, a tablespoon of sunscreen is needed for the face. There are no hard and fast physical amounts of sunscreen that apply to a broad range of people given different body types, different body sizes. For example, I have a rather large head. I have a large face. My coworker Desiree has a much smaller face. What I would need for sun protection on my face in terms of a nice even layer that's going to give me the SPF that's claimed on the label is absolutely going to be more than what Desiree would use, because she has literally less surface area to cover than I do. And the same goes true, as people of all different weights. A 6'5" man who weighs 250 pounds is going to have more skin to physically cover. Let's say he's just in a standard short style bathing suit, than a woman who is 105 pounds and 5'2" and has a petite frame. And then you have to take into account that the woman may be wearing a bathing suit that literally covers more of her skin than the man is. So you can't tell me that those two very different sizes of people need the exact same amount of sunscreen. For example, a shot glass is often 1 ounce is often the amount that's recommended for head to toe coverage. That may be more than enough for some people. It may not be quite enough for others. It just depends. So that is why the directions for sunscreen use, regardless of whose sunscreen it is, often default to saying apply liberally to all areas of exposed skin, or apply an even layer. I wish there was a very simple guideline. For the face, a half a teaspoon. Oh, adding the neck, a quarter teaspoon more. Is your chest visible? A quarter teaspoon mid. I mean, they can be helpful guidelines just to give you a sense of how much to eyeball as you're dispensing the sunscreen. But what ultimately counts is making sure that you are applying a smooth, even layer to all areas of exposed skin. And then what I do, particularly on days when I know I'm going to be out in intense sun, in other words, I'm getting more direct sun exposure than I typically would sitting in my home office and only going outside to run to the grocery store or pick up my son from school or check the mail. I put an extra layer excuse me, of sunscreen on the high points of my face. Like right up here, the high point of the cheekbones, the bridge of the nose. I'll often go along my hairline because I am definitely, I am prone to sunburn there, and you know, this is the first area where sunscreen is going to start to wear off when you're sweating, you know, from your scalp, or if you're wearing a hat, that can rub some of it off right at the hairline. So it's never a bad idea to apply more sunscreen than you think you need. And then, what else was I going to get? Oh, especially when you are outside for more than 2 hours in direct sun, or if you are getting wet, whether it's from getting into and out of a pool, or you're perspiring because you're exercising or doing yard work or whatever outside, then you need to apply much more often. Oh my gosh. I'm hoping I can keep going here. Okay. Let's see if we're going to be good. Whew. What about the myth that wearing sunscreen causes a vitamin D deficiency? That's never been shown to be true. Ironically, in areas closer to the equator, where the sunlight is much more intense, and getting that UVB on skin to make vitamin D is a much more efficient process than it would be for someone who lives in a northern latitude. Populations in that area, and these are populations that do tend to have darker, more melanated skin, have a higher incidence, generally speaking, of vitamin D deficiency than people who live further away from the equator and are getting less intense sun exposure. The truth is, it does not take that much UVB light to trigger your skin to make vitamin D. In fact, some researchers have said that because no sunscreen is 100% effective at keeping all the UV rays out, that the small amount of UVB, because UVB is fairly intense. Keep in mind that in the UV spectrum that reaches Earth, UVA constitutes 95% of that, and UVB is just 5%. So that should give you an idea of how much stronger the ultraviolet B rays are than the ultraviolet A rays, and why UVB rays are much more likely to trigger sunburn, whereas UVA tends to trigger tanning. UVA also triggers deeper solar damage because it penetrates further into the skin, steadily degrading and destroying that elastin and the other substances that are in the dermal or middle layer of skin. Not good. So even that tiny amount of UVB that is getting past your sunscreen is enough to trigger vitamin D production for a great number of people. If you're concerned, it's never a good idea to forego sunscreen use just to make sure you're getting enough vitamin D. What you can do is talk to your healthcare provider about whether or not you should be taking a vitamin D supplement. They are readily available. They're inexpensive. Some health insurance plans may even cover certain forms of vitamin D. And you can also talk to your healthcare provider about having a simple blood test done to determine what your current level of vitamin D is. You may not need a supplement. Your levels may be well within the normal range. A lot of people fall outside of that range and really could benefit from taking a supplement. But again, that's something to discuss with your healthcare provider. And run, don't walk from any healthcare provider that says you can get, don't worry about sunscreen, just go out in the sun for 15 minutes a day. That ends up just being bad advice, because UVB radiation, the intensity, it varies throughout the day and depending on where you are in the world. All right, guys. I don't know. I'm going to keep trying to get through this, but my voice is just getting so froggy. I'm so sorry. Next myth. SPFs with super high ratings are better than lower ratings. That is, that's up for debate. Well, not really. It is, so an SPF 30 has been shown to block up to 97% of UV rays. An SPF 50 gets you to 98%, and then an SPF 100 about 99%. So small differences, but looked at another way, you could say that SPF 50 provides 50% more UVB protection, because you're getting a whole percentage point difference, than SPF 30. So my general advice is that for most people, SPF 30 applied liberally is sufficient on a daily basis. If you are going to be outside for a longer period of time, particularly if it's on a sunny day, if you're going to be outside in the middle of the day, if you are traveling to a climate where it is more, not necessarily even a climate, but a part of the world that is at a higher elevation than where you normally live, mountains versus sea level, for example. If you're traveling someplace that's getting you closer to the equator, and normally you live in a more northern latitude, those are all good ideas, good occasions to wear SPF 50. And I am so sorry to do this. We'll try to pick this up again later in the month, but I'm going to have to stop because I just can't keep talking. There's just something going on with my throat, and it's just kind of, as you can hear, cutting in and out. So sorry, guys. We will revisit this topic at another chat. Maybe even sometime next week we'll try to sneak one in. Okay? Thanks.